church is a perfect place to meet at least one of these needs. A place of love and belonging. Maybe you're sitting here and thinking, what does this have to do with us? What does this have to do with the church? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we are in the middle of a series called Together, where we are introducing a new mission, new vision, looking at who we are as a church and where we are going as a church. So far, we've explored the fact that we are very different. And you didn't need me to tell you that the first week, but we've explored the fact that we're different ethnically, and we're different generationally, and we're different politically, and walks of life, and theological assumptions, all those things. And we discovered that in the midst of our diversity, Jesus calls us to unity, because the stakes are too high. As a church, the stakes are too high out in this world for us to be divided. To let our differences divide us, the stakes are too high for that. So we decided to say we are many people, one voice in Jesus' name. We're many people, one voice in Jesus' name. So last week we started unpacking our mission statement. And that was striving to be a loving community, seeking, serving, sharing Jesus. We looked at the first three words, the striving to be. And those words inform us that we haven't arrived yet, that we're all still a work in progress, but this is our goal. We are striving to be. Today we're going to explore the next phrase in our mission statement. And as we were developing that statement, this next part came up as we considered the question, what would we want those outside of the church to think about us? Not necessarily unbelievers, but certainly unbelievers, but also people that just move into the area, things like that. When they see our church, and they go to our website, whatever, what do we want them to think of us? And we landed on this. What would we lead with? We decided whether you're a church person or not, whether you've been in church all your life and you're a believer who's followed Jesus most of your life, or if you're still checking out the claims of Jesus and aren't sure you believe yet, we felt like these three words would engage everyone. So we decided that we're striving to be a loving community. We decided a loving community is not going to put anyone off. If we could be a loving community, we felt like that was going to be great, because everyone needs to be loved. Everyone needs to be accepted, to have a place of belonging. We, as a church, want to be that place. In our vision for the future, we say it like this. We envision a place where the people of Windham find acceptance, hope, truth, and love. A place where people are welcomed as they are, and then help to become what God intends for them to be. Sound like an all right place to be? Okay, Tony, that's great, mate. We're going to be that place. And the rest of you can join in, and we'll accept you and let you find hope and truth and love and all those things. So as we start processing that, even over the last few weeks, as preparing for this, I thought, the loving community, where did that even come from? Why did we decide we need to be a loving community? Well, Maslow was not the author of that. He's not the one that decided everyone needs to be loved. He may have discovered that or put it in words we could understand. But somebody else actually started this whole thing. Look at John chapter 13, verse 34. It says this, "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other." See, this whole loving community thing started with Jesus. He's the one that started that, and Jesus calls us to love one another. He calls us as believers in Him, followers of Him, to love one another. Now, when Jesus made this statement in John chapter 13, that statement changed everything. When He said, love one another as I have loved you. See, in the context leading up to this statement in John chapter 13, Jesus is having a meal with His disciples there in the upper room. It was before Passover. And He got up in the middle of that time together, and He went around washing each of the disciples' feet. You may remember that story. And He came to Peter, and Peter said, nope, you're not going to wash my feet. I can take care of that myself. You're not going to do that. And Jesus said, Peter, if I don't wash your feet, then you're not a part of me at all. You're not a follower of me, those kinds of things. And Peter said, well, give me a bath. I want it all then. If washing my feet is going to make me a part of you, then give me more than that. And Jesus said, no. You're clean except your feet. I'll just take care of the feet here. Jesus then, after he washed their feet, he revealed something to them that would have just really troubled all of their hearts. He revealed that one of them was going to betray him. He said, one of you is going to betray me tonight. We know, because we know the rest of the story, that that was Judas. So after Jesus said someone would betray him, all of a sudden Judas had to get up and leave the room because he remembered something else he had to go do that night. And Jesus then told them, not only is somebody going to betray me, but every one of you are going to deny me. And it's in that setting that he said, I'm giving you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just one. Love each other. Now, that would have been strange if he stopped there to the disciples, because that wasn't new. He had actually mentioned that before. If you look at Matthew was in the room that night. He's one of the guys at the table. Well, he wrote about this in a book that we call Matthew in the New Testament. Matthew chapter 22, verse 35 says this. One of them, an expert in religious law, tried to trap him with this question. Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. All right, so there's over 600 commandments that were given to the nation of Israel. And Jesus was asked, which is the greatest? And he boiled it all down to this, one word, love. He said, of all the 600 and something commandments, love. Love God and love your neighbor. He said, all the other commandments are going to hang off of that. If you love God and love your neighbor, that's going to fulfill everything. So loving each other was initiated by Jesus. Not us, not something we came up with as a church on our own, not by Maslow, but Jesus. That word kind, in case we need some help understanding it, means to be gracious and gentle, to demonstrate kindness to people, to show people pleasantness, really is the word used there. Is that hard to do? Just to be nice? That's what it's saying. Just be nice to people. Be nice to each other. And then he says in Galatians, he says you need to serve one another in love. To serve means to act as a slave or be humble. Okay, now we're getting a little bit tricky, right? I'm going to be somebody's slave? Well, that's what it says. So if we're going to serve one another, we need to put ourselves under someone else, serve their needs above our own. And he says this in that same chapter. He says, serve one another, for the whole law can be summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. But if you are always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. So serve one another, don't destroy one another. Then he says, submit to one another in Ephesians chapter 5. Now, this verse, Ephesians 5:21, has actually faded into the background in a lot of people's understanding of the writings of Paul and those things, because the next verse is used in weddings, or it used to be used in weddings a lot, where it said, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. You remember that? Amen. All right. Wow. And I noticed that Maria is not here today. Yeah. What was I saying anyway? That's submit to. If you go back to verse 21, before verse 22, where it's telling the wives submit to the husbands, it's saying we should submit to each other. That's the spirit of it. It's not about the wife. So we've actually dumped this one in the bin because we don't like the word submit anymore, because it's been used to demean women and things like that, and it shouldn't have been, and all those things. But we need to submit to one another. That means to obey or be put into subjection to put oneself, to put one's own interest beneath the interest of others. That's how we one another.